Robert, I have a
Yes.
question for you.
Hmm.
And I'm not sure, but I think that you have done some phone kind of consultations, lessons with people. Is that so?
I have, yes.
And could you talk about that and how you do it? And
Right. Well, I live in Lincoln, Nebraska, and there are not. This is not a lot of teachers in this area, and there are whole parts of the Midwest around me where there are no teachers. So I tend to often get students who come from out of town, and some of them either in combination with having the occasional lesson, or in some cases initially without any lessons. I work with them on the phone, and may sound very un-Alexandria-ish. And in fact, I don't in any way want to suggest that it is the Alexander technique, not at all. But I do think there's some coaching kind of things you can do to help someone with their posture and movement using the web. It's nice if they have a camera. It's nice if I can at least see a photograph of them. A camera is really good. And often you can help people in some very basic ways to improve the way their posture and the way they move. It's kind of
and
like Marge Barstow without the hands.
right.
That might be a
And
little
so you're
strong. Well,
talking about them having
I
a
want to take
webcam
that
and
back. That's
uh-huh.
presumptuous. But it was presumptuous, but it was not totally inaccurate in the sense that the way Marge Barstow taught, um, she could have taught any of those classes without using her hands if she'd chosen. She just used her hands because they were really helpful to do so, and she had amazing hands. But she didn't need hands to teach. And I think that's true of teachers now.
Yeah, I wonder about that in terms of maybe I know I don't really need hands because I can sort of mimic or I can help people mimic that upward direction in a way I can be directing myself up in a way that they just sort of pick it up. But they
Hmm.
have to be then in my vicinity. And I know it can be done a little bit on film. I played
Yeah.
around with that and I think it can be conveyed. But I think I wonder how do you convey that? Just
Well,
do you convey it just with the voice or do you
yeah,
actually?
yeah. With I just talk,
Uh,
but let me just say, obviously, if you have access to a teacher, get a teacher.
yes, yeah, of
Don't mess
course,
with the web.
absolutely.
Get the real thing. But if you
Yes,
don't
it'd be
have
much
access,
faster learning.
much faster.
Uh,
But if there is
much
no
better.
teacher, or if you have very limited access to a teacher, there are some things that can be done with conversation. And of course, if you have video, and one thing you'd want to be doing is having a hands-free headset to do this. Um, there's a lot that a teacher can help someone with. It's not the Alexander technique. It tends to emphasize a lot of body mapping ideas. That is, getting a
Hmm.
student to learn on their own where certain key relationships are in their body, and
Right.
learning to locate them and to use them the way they're designed to be used. And I think it's Barbara Conable who's one of the, well, Bill Conable was sort of the inventor of body mapping, or the discoverer, and Barbara and Bill have spread that over the last 20 or 30 years now. Um, a basic law of human movement, I think, that Barbara came out with, was that if there's a conflict between what you think is going on in your body and what's really going on, and we're talking about a physical thing like, for example, how does your head move relative to your neck and your body, or how do your arms move relative to your torso, or where are your hips? So those kind of very basic questions. If your idea of what's going on differs from the reality, you're going to get a lot of extra strain and tension. You'll still
That's
move.
well
You're
put.
not gonna you're
Well,
not gonna change the reality, but you're not going to use the machinery the way it was designed to be used, and it can suffer a lot of misuse. But at some point, there's usually a price to pay for that in terms of pain or movement limitations or so on. So there's a lot someone can learn just by starting to discover key relationships in themselves, and by
Right.
learning, and just finally, and by learning how to mentally direct themselves in a useful way, how they can sort of take charge of how they stand, sit, and move.
Absolutely. And just your point is, of course, it's not really it's not an Alexander lesson, but
No.
who better to talk to people about this
Hmm.
really than an Alexander teacher? If they're going to get advice somewhere
Hmm.
on how to move
Oh,
or
that's a
how to
good
use their
point.
body,
Yeah, yeah.
who better to get that advice from
Boy, it sounds
than if a
arrogant, but it
person
really
can't?
is true, isn't it? I mean,
Yes, yes. I'm
because
sorry, I don't mean to sound
no,
arrogant, but
but it's the truth.
in
It's the
terms
truth.
of those concepts and as long as it's clear to the person, well, it's different. It's not an Alexander lesson. You really,
Right,
you
right,
know, need that in-person experience there.
right.
Um, uh, but but if they just want to be able to move a little better, or maybe there's something that's so blatant that they're doing a certain way they're sitting or something that could easily be causing them discomfort, there that even somebody who just reads about the Alexander technique and misinterprets their their some of the basic ideas of it
Hmm.
still might be better off than they were before, and maybe better off than somebody who tells them to stand in a set position,
Yeah,
or tells
yeah.
them to tighten up a certain way, or
Right.
uh,
Well, almost all of the advice that's typically given for quote improving unquote your posture or involve some variant of sit up straight or stand up straight or hold your shoulders back or watch your posture, which is the most preposterous of all, because if you could watch it, you'd already be watching it. They're all very bad advice, and Alexander
right, and they're
teachers,
they're really all positional.
they're
They're
positional.
also
They're
also people tend to get more
right.
stiff.
Right. They treat posture as a kind of fixed
It's
position,
fixed.
or a noun. You could say even a noun versus being a web, not a web, of a verb. Could be a web too. A verb. I mean, posture really is about movement, and Alexander teacher would be pretty aware of that. Maybe we should end this conversation here. What do you think? I think we've covered
Okay.
this. All right. Great.